So, folks, we are going into, by the time you're seeing this, it's going to be the day of the Michigan primary. It's very, very exciting because this is really where it's all kind of built up to right now in this current midterm election cycle. It's really cool to see. And the epicenter of it all is, of course, Abdul El-Sayed and Haley Stevens going at it for the Democratic primary in Michigan. And I mean, it doesn't really get much more of like a finer point on it than this. Like when Politico writes, "We're about to find out how powerful progressives really are," and they put out like a full spread on this. Like they're not skimping on it, you know. And I mean, what is at stake here is not just, hey, who's going to go to the general election, and represent the Democratic Party for a Senate seat in Michigan. Like, that's kind of like bare bones, like bare minimum, that's the function of this race, right? But beyond just the function, we need to look at who's placed importance on this. And it's not only like mainstream press like Politico, right? It's not just them. It's also the big donors. And it's truly astounding. AIPAC has spent a record amount on Michigan Senate primary, the biggest test of its influence yet. And you can go through here and see, AIPAC donated almost $30 million to Haley Stevens' campaign. We're in a primary. That's $30 million to win a primary race, to win not even win the seat, just to win the primary. This amount of outside spending is unprecedented. It's unprecedented. And not only that, AIPAC isn't the only group that's spending money on Haley Stevens' campaign. There's a part in here that made my eyes pop out of this AP piece. The four-term Congresswoman raised half of what El-Sayed did in the latest fundraising period until June 30th. Her team said in a statement that the campaign is raising the resources we need to win this race. She spent only $12,000 of her own campaign funds on advertising through early July before bumping it up to close to $1 million, according to Ad Impact. Outside organizations, meanwhile, have poured close to $50 million into boosting her candidacy. Like, we're talking like a guy who's accepting small dollar donations and donations from the unions in the state, which, the unions have a decent amount of money. They don't got $50 million to drop on the goddamn primary though. Really what this comes down to, and the reason all of the members of the Democratic establishment have their eyes set on Michigan, is because they are desperate to know, can this money actually keep their jobs? Because they're all terrified. They are all terrified that, if we start getting it, guys, $50 million. Well, I thought it was over $60 million now. It is over $60 million now because this article is from July 19th. So the spending has ballooned since then. Especially now that we are on the final stretch here. And the reality is that if establishment Democrats start seeing that people are so angry and people are so dissatisfied with status quo, business as usual, return to normalcy politics, that even $60 million plus isn't going to secure their future in Congress, well, that's when you start seeing some people abandoning their, deeply held convictions when they're establishment members of Congress, right? If you see Haley Stevens lose today, then what you're also going to start seeing is Democrats scrambling to reposition. Because the entirety of the Democratic Party has been gambling on the fact that big corporate donations can save their bacon. And that is absolutely not the case, it seems like. Because let's take a quick look here at what Abdul El-Sayed is saying in the lead up, the final hours leading up to this election. Let's check out over on CBS.
Abdul El-Sayed and Congresswoman Haley Stevens making their final pitches, as you might expect, to Democratic voters before tomorrow's primary for the U.S. Senate seat. Our Ed O'Keefe spoke to Abdul El-Sayed and joins me now from a Haley Stevens event we should underscore because we are talking to both sides as best we can. Ed, take it away.
Major, good to be with you from Michigan. This is the big contest tomorrow. All eyes on what it means here in this battleground state, set to be an early presidential primary state next in 2028. We spoke with Abdul El-Sayed, the former public health official, former 2018 gubernatorial candidate, about this contest against the Congresswoman Haley Stevens. And we spent a good chunk of our conversation talking about, given that this is a primary, what it means to be a Democrat and the future of the Democratic Party. Take a listen. So if you win and get the Democratic Party that you want, who belongs in it and who doesn't?
Anybody who wants to take on fascism, anybody who wants to get money out of politics, anybody who wants to fight for union rights, anybody who wants to make sure that people can live free with clean air and drink clean water, anybody who wants to guarantee health care, come on in, the water is fine. We want to build a broad coalition, but sometimes when the Democratic Party talks about a big tent, we push everybody into the corner and then go talk and pander to the corner. I'm just trying to bring everybody to the tent pole in the middle to talk about what we really need. We need good housing. We need good schools. We need health care. We need to know that our government works for us rather than the corporations who buy off politicians. We need to know that our money is going to be spent on us. And I think that can unite people independent of how they pray, who they love, how they identify, if they pray, where they come from in the state, the color of their skin, coming together to build something that we can only have together.
Do you get, well...
The thing is, what's crazy is people act like he is somehow, like, doing some kind of mental jujitsu, right? And, like, he's not. He's just straightforward, like, we want good things to happen, like, actively good things to happen, not just, you know, more of the same to happen, because more of the same was actually bad for a whole lot of people. So what if instead we did good? And, like, it baffles people sometimes. It's genuinely crazy. How can Republicans be bigots if they always ask for my FMB picks in secret? Does that make them pro-LGBT and pro-queer rights? I mean, no, it just means that they objectify you. Like, they aren't pro-LGBT or pro-queer. They're just, you know, looking to do what they always do, which is use other people for their own gratification. Oh, femboy picks. Gotcha. Thank you for the $5 Australian, El Salve. But yeah, no, it's using people. It's continuing to use people. Can't say femboy in Super Chat for some reason. Fascism.
Is there any group of people in the organization that's sort of a red line for you that says, no, you're not part of this, or that view is not part of the Democratic Party I'm hoping to sustain here in Michigan?
We're trying to define a viewpoint that's built on money out of politics, money in your pocket, Medicare for all. If you agree with those things, come join us. We're for civil liberties. We're for equal rights. We love and appreciate all people. And I want to build this movement, bringing people together around the things we need and deserve that we can have together if we fight for them.
Is the DSA part of the Democratic Party in Michigan?
I'm not DSA.
I know you're not.
But if folks from the DSA want to be part of the Democratic Party, I would imagine that anybody would want them there, right? Because you want voters. Like, this idea that somehow we are going to win elections by...
I do want to say the blocking on his face, maybe it's like they didn't take into account that there would be a huge-ass chyron at the bottom of the picture. But, like, it's making him look like a short king, and I'm pretty sure he's, like, over 6 feet tall.
Pushing people out seems to me to be inconsistent with the way that democracy works. You want a coalition of all people. You know who else are going to be part of my coalition? 3-time Trump voters who want health care, who want to keep our money here at home.
And they're out there, yeah.
They're out there. I meet them at almost every event I go to. So we're building a big, broad coalition, truly a big tent of people that combines folks from DSA on one side.
Which I gotta say, I love this framing. Specifically because what the interviewer is trying to do is to say, oh, maybe DSA doesn't have a place in the Democratic Party. And hey, Abdul, you're not DSA, so are you willing to throw DSA under the bus? And Abdul El-Sayed does not do that, and instead points out that, hey, like other Democrats, we're trying to have a big tent and bring in disaffected folks who are sick of, Republican leadership. And like, bring that in to bring in as many voters on a pro working class platform as you can get. And like, this is savvy because the approach of going after disaffected Republicans has been the main strategy of the Democratic Party for, since the dawn of time. Not really, but like for quite some time. And that's the common wisdom within the Democratic Party. But what he's doing here by pointing that out is to also say, hey, that means we should that acceptance should go both ways. We should accept DSA as well, which is of course like a no-brainer because they're the most likely people to support him. But like, I think it's a great message to put forward that I think even establishment Democrats will latch on to as the dust begins to settle on this race.
Even if I'm not a socialist, and combined 3-time Trump voters, even if I've never voted for Donald Trump.
El-Sayed points out that he's been outspent. It's about 9-1 money for Stevens versus money for him.
God damn, that it gets like every single day it gets more dire. Like it was like, it was something like 5-1, then 7-1. Now we're all the way up to 9-1.
But he seems pretty confident going into tomorrow, Major, that money may not have mattered.
I noted, as I'm sure you did, Ed.
We don't need more of their back and forth. I'm sure it's scintillating, but we don't need it. The most important thing is that the final polls have also come in. And do want to say that some of the last minute flailing from the Stevens campaign might be attributable to this, which is the scuttlebutt going around in Democratic circles at the moment from a Twitter account, You Mitch Voter, who has had the inside skinny on different Michigan political campaigns in the past. But allegedly, Haley Stevens' pollster has called her up and told her there's no path to victory. Also, in this inside campaign leak, she's down about 14 points. And this happened, I believe, yesterday. 4+ different people have been able to confirm they also heard this, obviously under the condition of anonymity. Stevens might be absolutely and completely cooked because all of this aligns with the public-facing polling we now have in the final polling of this race. Michigan pollster Mitchell Research and Communications has El-Sayed up 14 points. And like, yeah, that's not great. But also, even more devastatingly, a Zenith Research poll found that El-Sayed led Stevens on an initial ballot 53-34%. When undecided voters were pushed about who they would support, El-Sayed with an 18-point lead. I mean, guys, I don't want to like get a little bit too excited before, the lady sings, but like, ooh, this is not good news. Not good news at all that for the Stevens campaign. And I do also want to point out that Haley Stevens' final last-ditch attempt to get one over on Abdul El-Sayed seems to just be, gosh darn it, it's just so weird that he's focusing on the AIPAC donations. That's my Haley Stevens voice. I can't do it. No one can.
Michigan is one of several states holding primaries, including one of the most highly anticipated elections in the country. Congresswoman Haley Stevens and former health official Abdul El-Sayed are competing for the Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate. Both spent the weekend making their final pitches to voters.
I think we make the best electability case on the notion that we don't need $70 million to get elected, and that our movement is built on real people and an enthusiasm money can't really buy.
There's been some inflammatory rhetoric from my opponent throughout this race. He's made this whole race about Israel and AIPAC, and I have made it about lowering costs for Michiganders. About
You know, my opponent says that I'm taking tens of millions of dollars from special interests and I'm not going to represent the people of Michigan. But I say, why aren't we talking about energy costs? like what do you mean? Of course it's relevant that you're accepting tens of millions of dollars. Like, you're being bought and sold publicly. It is ridiculous. Also, I do want to point out that Abdul El-Sayed is managing to do this while at the same time not throwing trans people under the bus. And this is, I think, a really important aspect of his campaign, because the conventional wisdom among Democrats is, oh, you're facing a tough election, throw trans people under the bus. It will make those triple Trump voters like you a little bit more. And well, let's see what Abdul El-Sayed had to say about that.
My opponent says that I'm taking money from special interests, but joke's on him. I have no special interests.
I've none at all. I only spend 20 hours a day making gunpla. But no special interests. Ha! How dare my opponent bring Gunpla into this race? Anyway, this is Sake Tanuki. Thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. And here we go. The idea that we can assent to the taking away of anybody's rights and think that somehow the government won't come for all of our rights is itself a problem. And look, I don't need people to understand how they use their rights. I just need people to agree that the government shouldn't be able to take away any of our rights. I put my face on the ground 34 times a day, David. Most people don't understand why I do it. I don't need them to understand. I just want to have the right to do it. And when people decide that they want to take away my right to do that, I've got a problem. Now, I hope that everybody's going to show up and say, no, you can't stop that person or that community from reflecting or praying as they choose. Similarly, when it comes to trans rights, this is the right to get the health care that you need. That's really what it comes down to. It's the right to be who you are. It's the right not to be discriminated against by your government because of who you are. Because what tends to happen is they come for theirs, then they come for yours. Then they come for theirs. And at some point, you live in a society where rights are negotiable, and that is not the America I was born in. It's not the America I know and love. It's not the America I'm going to allow somebody like Donald Trump to give us. And that is top tier answer right there. Because what that communicates is strength. What that communicates is that a man is gonna go to the mat for you and yours. That is the kind of fighter that you need in a political office. And that's kind of the whole point, right? Like when Amy Acton, for example, gives up on trans rights and just goes, oh yeah, no, I don't want boys playing in girls' sports, and then acts all cute about it, right? What that communicates is not strength. It communicates weakness. It communicates, oh, actually, I'm hollow and easily swayed. It doesn't convince people. Instead, it doesn't convince people about your campaign. It convinces them that they are more ideologically correct. It reinforces conservative beliefs. It reinforces their commitment to the GOP. And so what winds up happening is that capitulation dooms a political candidate and their campaign. And I want to throw this up here because one of the things that I appreciate right now when it comes down to, hey, how is that going over? Right? Because I want to bring up a quote from James Talarico, which I think people can appreciate as we transition into talking about the Texas races, because I think it's important. Here's a clip from Rachel Maddow, of all places. I'm not the biggest fan of Maddow, but you know what? I think Talarico did pretty good here.
Critics have argued that one of the things that makes you unelectable in Texas, is a reason that you can't win in Texas, is because you have been empathetic toward and voiced support for trans people. That you have not been willing to join in the demonization of trans people that motivates so many candidates right now, and that the Republican Party has relied on so heavily in general election campaigns.
Wait, we don't like Maddow? I don't dislike Maddow, but I dislike her affect, which is not the same as disliking her general points. I think the points she makes are great. I just personally find it difficult to watch her deliver those points. Hopefully that makes sense.
What's your response to that?
I mean, I don't think we win by selling people out. And we're refusing to do that in this campaign. This is a campaign of, by, and for all Texans. And I think people...
And also, she's a bit of a lib for my taste. You know, I'm a socialist. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool socialist. So, like, sometimes I'm just like, okay, this is this is a bit libbed up, not gonna lie, but that's me.
People are really tired of these culture war fights that are designed to tear us apart, designed to get us angry. I mean, there are difficult issues. Trying to figure out trans athletes in sports, that's an issue where we could actually come to a policy solution. But instead, politicians like Ken Paxton, they use those difficult issues to rile people up, to divide us, to distract us, in order to win power for themselves. I mean, it's divide and conquer. It's the oldest strategy in the world. And so what we're trying to do in this campaign is bring people together. I've said that the most radical thing you can do in an era of division is unite people. And we're not going to win with the politics of division. We can't win that game. We have to change the game. And I think what's exciting about this campaign is so many people are hungry for that kind of politics of union, of friendship, of love. And people have been so starved of it for so long now. I mean, we've seen what a politics of fear looks like. We've seen what a politics...
AAH queer 90s haircut overload in this interview.
Yeah, okay, you know, as a member of the queer community here, I will say I really want Talarico to get a better haircut. And that, yes, Maddow does have a very stereotypical cut. They both have very stereotypical cuts, but Talarico's infringing on the territory of you know, butch lesbians, and I think that maybe he should back off a little bit. Okay, butch lesbians fought hard to be able to embrace that hairstyle. You can't just come in and take queer culture like this. But yeah, I kid. I like Talarico. I think that I get the Boy Scout haircut. I understand it. I understand the appeal. What kind of haircut will work good for him? I don't know. He needs to take himself to like some kind of you know, queer hotspot and just ask them to give him a haircut, any haircut.
Of anger and rage looks like, but it's been a while since politics has made us feel hopeful or excited about the future, or brings us together and creates community. And I think that's what we're building in Texas in this election.
Critics.
Perhaps Talarico could be Joe Cat, but politics? No. I do appreciate that he's effectively, as I've said since the very beginning, he is effectively a dagger in the heart of Christian nationalism in a way that I think is very necessary to elevate to the national level. I will also say that in general, while I appreciate his rhetoric, his political positions are not as far left as one might think, right? And so part of me is just kind of like, I think this might be the best that Texas can do right now, but I do think that there is room to improve from Talarico. And I do think that maybe, you know, I think maybe Talarico is capable of improving himself over time as well. So that'd be really cool. So a center-left lib? I mean, yeah, essentially.
Have argued.
I think that like his response on trans rights is strong, it is forceful, and the fact that he is meaningfully like planting his flag at, defending trans rights is something that's important because it speaks to strength. And honestly, one of the very few things that independents and Republicans respond to, and liberals respond to, is strength. Regardless of your position, people respect strength of conviction. And that, I think, is something that is lacking from a lot of establishment Democrats, right? All of this is leading to an absolutely fascinating dynamic here when it comes to how Republican politics are, and politics in general are reacting to what's going down in Texas. And I think we need to take a quick look here.
So do you believe Talarico will win? Texas might be in play right now, but the roots of Republicans seem really dug in. It makes me second guess.
Oh, yes. I do think, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say this early that Talarico is definitely going to win Texas. However, I will point out that despite the fact that Donald Trump won by 14 points or nearly 14 points in 2024, Talarico is currently at +3 compared to Paxton, which is, within the margin of error here, but like is a positive sign. And when we start to take a look at people who are extremely motivated to vote between Paxton and Talarico, that number climbs up to a 6-point lead. So what's going to happen here is, I mean, like, frankly, the fact that a Democrat at all is polling ahead of Paxton is crazy.
If
it's
Texas
crazy.
Goes blue, it's all on table. I am trying to stay hopeful. Thanks for that in these dark
Oh,
times.
no, I would say be hopeful, because there is a decent possibility here that, like, he could win. And, like, I don't want to get all of our hopes up right now, but to really hammer home how absolutely wild Texas's election is going to be come November 3rd, I'm going to throw the poll results up in an easily digestible visual image for you all for the Texas governor's race. Now, I'm throwing this up here because, well, I'm guessing most people haven't been thinking a whole lot about the governor's race in Texas. Well, let's take a quick look, shall we? This is from a Fox News poll, and I want to really stress home, this is from Fox News. Greg Abbott is clinging for dear life. Gina Hinojosa has 49% of the vote. Nobody's been talking about this race. I didn't even know that Greg Abbott was on the ropes like this. And guys, it's not the election isn't for another couple months. We have a couple months of hardcore campaigning in front of us. And I want to say here, if you are in Texas or you're in, any of these states in the lead up to the general election, because, if you're watching this and you're in Michigan, now you know who's won the, presumably, who's won the primary race. But that still leaves a stretch of time between the primary and the general. We need people knocking doors. We need people phone banking. Because when we're talking about margins this small, knocking a few hundred doors makes a difference. Calling a few hundred houses makes a difference. It's a numbers game. And every single time you make contact with someone in their home to let them know how important it is that they go out and vote that day, that is upping the likelihood that the entire household will go out and vote that day. All right? Like, we are currently in a time where your involvement can genuinely make a difference. So, if you need help getting out there, going to do that, there's a link down in the description for Progressive Victory. They're holding door knocking events, phone banking events across the country from now until Election Day to help get out the vote, to help make sure people come out and vote in the midterms, because it is genuinely possible right now. And I hesitate to even speak it. It is possible that Democrats win the House, but also it's possible that Democrats win the Senate. And I'm not going to say that it's like the most likely outcome, but there's like maybe a solid 40% chance here that Democrats could take the Senate as well. And that is not nothing. That is worth fighting for. Okay? And so let's turn to one of the most important upcoming, Senate seats here, which is, of course, Maine. And when it comes to Susan Collins, I've been curious to see what the polling will show when it comes to a Troy Jackson versus Susan Collins dust-up here in the general. And let's take a quick look, shall we?
As someone who grew up in North TX, they're going to try every trick to depress turnout and throw
100%.
out ballots.
100%.
TX chatters, be aware and start organizing to get people out and votes counted ASAP.
No, earlier somebody commented that there's a meeting tomorrow morning about whether or not to slash 45% of like the polling places. If you're in Tarrant County, Texas, there is a commission board meeting today at 10 o'clock in the morning. And they are trying to cut 45% of the polling places in the county. So those are the kinds of voter suppression tactics that the GOP in Texas are currently trying to implement. So yeah, there's a whole lot of bullshit happening in these Republican states. Okay? So there you have it. Make sure you're doing what you can to combat it wherever you are. But looking at the main race here, we've got a new poll from the Pine Tree State Poll at the University of New Hampshire, which states that among likely voters, 49% said they would vote for Jackson and 46% said they'd vote for Collins. So right now, Troy Jackson is in a 3-point lead over Susan Collins. But what's really interesting here is this particular map of the poll respondents here. So you've got among likely voters, 49% for Jackson and 46% for Susan Collins. And what I find fascinating is that when we actually break it down by a little bit more, the poll shows how people view the different candidates. And what's interesting about that is that Susan Collins is a very known quantity. So her approval, her approval numbers are effectively like, 35% of those polled approve of Susan Collins, and 53% are very unfavorable, and 0% don't know anything about Susan Collins. The great news for Troy Jackson here is that while his favorability numbers are lower, he also has a 15% of people who just don't know who he is yet. Which means that running advertisements to establish his brand identity and like what he actually stands for in politics. I know I just said brand identity and that made me throw up in my mouth a little bit, but like it matters. Because the more people that get to know him, the more people I think might get to like him.
Susan Collins promised she would only serve 2 terms. She made that promise in the fall of 1996. 30 years later, Susan Collins is still in Washington. Who has she served? She has served Donald Trump. She voted with him 96% of the time. She helped deliver enormous tax breaks to the corporations and the wealthy on our backs. And she voted to confirm Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, the Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe versus Wade. And what she says in Maine does not erase what she does down in Washington. We can defeat Susan Collins, and we can take back that Senate seat. So if you've ever been ignored, underestimated, pushed around, or told that you have to wait your turn while the rich cut the line, I'm asking you to stand with us in this campaign.
Yeah, like I don't think I've ever seen like a hell yeah brother kind of ad for a politician before, but like we got our first hell yeah politician. Who is he? He's a guy who grew up in the logging industry as a professional logger in a town of
I will build at least one affordable house. A wise recyclon.
I like that guy's gusto. Isn't it great? Let's see here. I think maybe this was the one where he talks about being a logger.
They said that a bunch of loggers could not take on the big landowners exploiting them. But we did. And they said a guy from Allagash could not rise to the Maine Senate, and I did. And now they're going to say that a grassroots campaign powered by working people cannot defeat Susan Collins. But you know what?
They're wrong.
They're wrong again. Power does not give working people anything out of the goodness of its heart. Sometimes you have to make the people in charge so uncomfortable that they can't ignore you anymore. We're not from the left, we're not from the right, we're from the bottom and we're rising. And I know what happens when working people decide that they've had enough. When we do, we stand up, we lock arms, we fight back, and then we win. Let's go and beat Susan Collins and send a working class fighter from the Northwoods of Maine to United.
Was he had a slight cough. He seems like a strong candidate. A slight cough would end most of Congress.
It's true.
State Senate.
Yeah, so his entire thing is that his entire political career has been oriented around fighting for, workers, essentially. He's not bluffing. Like he rose to political prominence by, blockading, because the little bit of background, the essentially logging barons, because they still have robber barons in Maine, were bringing in Canadian workers as essentially scabs, and he led a bunch of loggers to blockade the border crossing in order to protest the use of scabs. And that in turn led to his political rise. In this particular race, he has the backing of a lot of the major unions across Maine. He also has the backing of DSA. He's a DSA endorsed candidate. And he's a proponent of Medicare for all. He wants better worker rights. He's like the real deal. He's the real deal. Yeah, the biggest gotchas against him is, he was a Republican 20 years ago, and then he, like an adult does, learned and grew and did better.
Did you hear Troy used to run a bunch of troll accounts messing with Republicans? Dude, seems all right to me.
That's great. I heard only vaguely about that. Help me understand why this wasn't the first pick in the first place. My understanding is that it's because Chuck Schumer got involved and was like, Janet Mills is going to be the candidate. And like that, and then Plattner kind of rose to prominence, and it just kind of became a whole thing. So he put his campaign on hold because Chuck Schumer was trying to strong arm into the Maine Senate race. And now that, obviously Plattner's gone and Mills is gone, he's jumping in. Oh yeah, that's right. He also did have a run for governor. Yeah, it's like a whole thing. They did have like a campaign teed up and they had to put it on pause. So anyway, it's interesting to see how this is all gonna shake out and shake up. And I do want to say, I want to end on a funny note here, because we're just talking about how the different elections are going across the country that are seen as relatively pivotal. I want you all to just, let's check in with Mike Pillow. How's his campaign going to be governor of Minnesota?
Republican Party is asking the Secretary of State to clarify whether Lindell meets the state's requirements to run for governor. Party Chair Alex Plagich says his request is prompted by serious questions that have been raised publicly regarding the eligibility of candidate Lindell. And he says it's essential that Minnesotans know the correct standard prior to the primary election day. The request comes as questions have been raised about Lindell's time in Texas and whether he's been a Minnesota resident for a full year before Election Day. Political analyst Stephen Scheer calls this situation unprecedented.
We've never had a party challenge the residency of one of its serious candidates for its party's nomination. And then you add the fact that this candidate has been endorsed by the president of that party. It's really an extraordinary situation.
The Secretary of State confirms they have received the letter from the Republican Party. However, they say they don't have jurisdiction to investigate residency. They say that is up to the Minnesota Supreme Court.
Yeah, this might go all the way to the Supreme Court of Minnesota, guys. Anyway, Minnesota politics, it's very serious here. It's very, very serious. If you're in Minnesota, consider voting vote for Kobe for the governor in the Democratic primary, because we want to make sure Amy Klobuchar feels pressure from the left to, adopt some left-leaning policies. Oh my God, it's so funny. It's so funny how just utterly incompetent our political enemies are. What happens if he loses the court case? What happens if he loses the case about his residency? Then he's just not able to be governor. Simply seraphic. That's what I said. That's why Schumer jumped in and weighted the scales for Janet Mills and had Jackson bow out, because Jackson, has relationships with party politics since he was the president of the Maine Senate. Yeah. Anyway, folks, if you got anything out of this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, and of course, do consider getting involved in your local political scene. Join your local Dems, join your local DSA if you need help. Join our Discord, reach out to GamerG for help with DSA, reach out to Dragonfly for help joining your local Dems. And folks, last but not least, check out ImogeneOlivia.com, gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes, tested with cis men, cis women, non-binary folks. It is comfortable, sexy, non-tucking lingerie. Just got a full restock, 2 new sizes, a new color. Go check it out, ImogeneOlivia.com. Let's keep on going.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather around. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, and plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.